All right, it is 4:31. I will call to order the August 19th, 2019 Minneapolis City Planning Commission hearing. My name is Sam Rockwell. I serve as president of the Planning Commission. I'm joined today by a full house: Commissioners Ellison, Brown, Cogill, Coleman, Sweezy, Lupke-Pier, Schrader, Olson, and Kronzer. Our first order of business is to approve the actions from the August 5th, 2019 City Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, do I have a motion? Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any discussion? Motion carries. Next order of business is to review the Committee of the Whole agenda from August 8th. I'll turn that over to Vice President Lupke-Pier.
Yes, on August 8th, the Commission voted to approve the land sale of 1701 Thomas Avenue North, finding it consistent with the Minneapolis Plan for Sustainable Growth.
Very good. I will take that as a motion to approve that item number one. Commissioners, do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will work through the agenda for today's hearing. For those of you in the audience, I'm going to walk through the full agenda. If you wish to testify against an item, a staff recommendation for an item, or to change that staff recommendation, please raise your hand, make yourself known. Otherwise, we will be placing many of these items on the consent agenda if you do not speak up. So item number one is the Halo Hotel and Apartments, 620 and 800 9th Street Southeast, 633, 701, 715, 8th Street Southeast in Ward 3 for a final plat. Is anyone here to speak on that item? Seeing none, we will place item number one on consent. Item number two is the Dancing Bear Chocolate, 4367 Thomas Avenue North in Ward 4, a rezoning. Is anybody here to speak on item number two? Seeing none, I'll place item number two on consent. We do have one hand. Someone is here to speak on Dancing Bear? Yes. Yes, all right, we will discuss item number two, Dancing Bear. Item number three is the O'Shaughnessy Distillery parking lot at 600 Malcolm Avenue Southeast in Ward 2, conditional use permit site plan review, preliminary and final plat. Is anyone here to speak on item number three? Seeing none, I will place item number three on consent. Item number four is also O'Shaughnessy Distillery, 600 Malcolm Avenue Southeast in Ward 2 for the site plan review. Is anybody here to speak on item number four? Seeing no one, we'll place item number four on consent. Item number five is 2201 Jefferson Street Northeast in Ward 1, site plan review. Is anyone here to speak on item number five? Seeing no one, we'll place item number five on consent.
Dancing Bear is consent. Can you just recall that one? I think it's the applicant.
I'm sorry, is item number two, are you the applicant for Dancing Bear?
No, we're just here to test forward and not.
Then I would ask that you testify when we open the public hearing for the consent agenda.
He's not in opposition to staff recommendation.
Correct. So I'm going to pull that from discussion and place that on consent. And then if you wish to testify in favor of that, testify during the consent agenda open hearing. Thank you. All right. Item number 6 is the LOA 46 registered land survey at 4601 Snelling Avenue, 3939 46th Street East in Ward 12. Preliminary and final registered land survey. Is anybody here to speak on item number 6? Seeing no one, I'll place item number 6 on consent. Item number 7 is marathon signage, 1700 East Lake Street in Ward 9, non-conforming use. Is anybody here to speak on item number 7? Seeing no one, we'll place item number 7 on consent. Item number 8, the Minnehaha Mall addition at 2852 26th Avenue South in Ward 9, we will discuss. Item number 9, 2624 Essex Street Southeast in Ward 2. a variety of applications there for a multifamily building. Is anybody here to speak on item number 9? Seeing no one, will place item number 9 on consent. Item number 10, North Star at Cybert Field Addition, 1611 8th Street Southeast, 816th Avenue Southeast in Ward 2. Item number 10, is anyone here to speak on the applications for item number 10? Seeing no one, we'll place item number 10 on consent. Item number 11 is the timber project at 100 3rd Avenue North in Ward 3. A site plan review there. Is anybody here to speak on item number 11? We have one item, and sir, I would ask that if you are here to testify, that you testify with new information as we heard you last hearing. Very good. We'll place item number 2. And do you have new information for that?
Just some refinement.
Okay. Then we'll place item number 11 on the discussion agenda. Item number 12, 2824, 2828, and 2832 Girard Avenue South in Ward 10, a variety of applications for a residential building there. Is anyone here to speak on item number 12? Seeing no one, we'll place item number 12 on consent. Item number 13, 3224, 3236 Girard Avenue South on Ward 10, a variety of items for a residential building there. Is anybody here to speak on item number 13? Seeing no one, we'll place item number 13 on consent. Item number 14, 27th and Girard Apartments, 2701, 2707, 2709, 2715 Girard Avenue South in Ward 10. Is anybody here to testify? We have a couple here for item number 14. We'll place that on our discussion agenda. Item number 15 is the Main Street Apartments East, 1011 to 1027 Main Street, 1010 to 1016 2nd Street Northeast in Ward 3. Is anyone here to testify on item number 15? A few people on item number 15. We will discuss item number 15 and item number 16 are Main Street Apartments West, 1018 to 1024 Main Street Northeast in Ward 10. Is anyone here to speak on those? People are here to speak on item number 16 as well. So our agenda as amended is discussing items number 8, 11, 14, 15, and 16. Items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, and 13 on consent. Commissioners, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Next, we will open the public hearing on the consent agenda. Anybody who wishes to comment on any of the items on consent, if you wish, please come to the microphone. If anybody wishes, there's no obligation. State your name and address for the record.
I'm Katie Fitzpatrick. I work for the Victory Neighborhood Association at 2200 44th Avenue North, and I am here to testify in support of Dancing Bear Chocolate and rezoning the property at 44th Avenue and Thomas Avenue North from office to commercial. They have been just lovely to work with throughout the process. They're being very intentional about the contractors they're hiring, and they make really good chocolate. And one of our primary priorities for our neighborhood association is to encourage small business development in the neighborhood, and we think rezoning this property for Dancing Bear Chocolate is the opportunity to do just that, and we encourage the commission to support the rezoning efforts.
Very good, thank you. Next up, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Matthew Ralston, 4440 Victory. We live less than 1,000 feet from Dancing Bear Chocolate, their proposed location. Additionally, I'm a member of the Victory Board of Directors as well as the Business Committee. The Business Committee has been working tirelessly to find willing businesses, small businesses, businesses that are good for the community to come into the community, and we believe this is just one of the many businesses that will come forth. I've talked to all of our neighbors and surrounding landowners, and I haven't found anybody who's opposed to this. So we additionally would be in support, myself and my wife sitting over there. Thank you.
Very good, thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to testify in support of anything on the consent agenda? Seeing, yes, come to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
This is for any item that we're discussing, right?
This is just for items on the consent agenda which are being approved.
Oh, that we're not, okay.
Yes, not discussing. All right, seeing no one else, I will close the consent agenda. Commissioners, could I have a motion to approve items on the consent agenda? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, moving on to our discussion items. We'll start our discussion items with item number 8, Minnehaha Mall Edition, 2852 26th Avenue South. Peter Crandall, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Commissioners. The project before you is located at 2852 26th Avenue South, known as the Minneapolis Mall. The project is seeking a conditional use permit for an addition to an existing shopping center. That addition is subject to site plan review. It's a 4,500 square foot addition to an existing 109,472 square foot shopping center. As you can see in the zoning map here, it's a somewhat uniquely shaped parcel. The shopping center has a large surface parking lot that is shared with the grocery store immediately to the east. The parcel has frontage along 26th Avenue South. Staff is recommending approval of the applications with some conditions. The first condition has to do with the site plan review requirements for landscaping and screening along the public right-of-way. So on the eastern edge of the parcel along 26th Avenue South, there's a landscaped buffer. The site plan review requirements have a standard that there be one canopy tree per 25 linear feet along the street frontage. There are some gaps in that in the existing conditions on the site, and so CPED is recommending that the applicant comply with that by planting additional trees in that location. We're also recommending a condition of approval related to the building design itself, and this has to do with the visual interest standards in the site plan review, that buildings provide some kind of visual interest in their elevations, either through materials or windows, setbacks, recesses, projections, etc. The elevation, which you can see here, shows the addition on the right side, which will be clad in stucco, and then the existing building on the left, which has 2 horizontal brick bands and 1 stucco band. The condition of approval recommends that the applicant continue the brick banding around the addition such that it is compatible with the existing structure and meets the site plan review standard that buildings are similar to and compatible with the front, rear, and sides of the entire building. I think the applicant is here to discuss at least one of those conditions, but I can take any questions before we move forward.
Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you, Peter. I'd ask the applicant to come to the stand, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Richard Lavelle. I'm with Corridor Architecture and representing the owners that are doing the expansion. The only issue we had was the brick. It's a little deceiving on this in the staff report and stuff. If you've seen the entire site plan, I believe in your package you have an overall site plan with the parking that shows the size of this development. And the question we have here is the only place that there's brick on this building is literally the north elevation that faces the electrical power station. And so being asked to do this in the rear of the building, and it doesn't even affect the front facade, which is all painted white ephes right now. So the staff report says they're recommending the brick primarily because to be consistent with the existing elevations of the building. So I'm finding that a little deceiving in the fact that if you take a look at the site plan, that little section on the north end of the building is the only one that has brick in this entire building. Even Target does not have brick. It has painted precast panels and some painted EFS panels on it. So the owner's kind of wondering why we're dressing this thing up to appeal to the back of the building, which no one can really see. It's elevated Hiawatha Avenue there, so even the people driving across can't see the back of this building. And most of it faces, like I said, the power station that's right there in the corner. So that's really what the owner is wondering why. I appreciate the standard. I know why it's there. It's there for new developments. It's there for significant additions. But this is actually adding about a little less than 4% to the mall piece. And if you count Target, it's less than 2% of the square footage of the mall. So we really thought we were going to get potentially a administrative approval on this. And then we were told anything that's under a conditional use permit now has to go through the full process. So that's why we're here. And the only thing we're questioning, all the other staff recommendations seem to make sense to us. We're just asking for a little more common sense when it comes to the scope of this addition and what we're being required to do there. So that's really all we're asking, and we appreciate your consideration. Any other questions?
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anybody else here wishing to testify? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And commissioners, does anybody want to start us off with a discussion or a motion? Conditional use permit and site plan review. Peter.
I might just add one thing, which is that under the current elevation plan, the applicant is proposing to do a colored differential that matches the banding, and I can be corrected if that's not right, but that would, kind of continue the spirit of that existing north elevation in design, but potentially not material. So that's something to consider in weighing the outcomes.
And could you clarify, is the suggested banding in item number 7, is that in fact, it's hard to tell from the overhead satellite photo, is that in fact something that is kind of viewable by the public or not, and how does that kind of intersect with the public realm?
Not in a major way, no. It doesn't intersect with the public realm at all. I mean, there is the Hiawatha overpass from which this building is partially visible, but there's no public pathway or public sidewalk or anything that would be impacted by the addition.
Bounded by train tracks and so forth. Very good.
Loading areas, et cetera. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Lidke.
I have a question for staff. Hi, Peter. So just real quick, the material requirements that you have on is the condition number 7 on the site plan review. How does that gel with the normal percentage of building material requirements you request, as opposed to like EFS or another material? Like, are we exceeding what we would normally request on the back of a building?
So EFS is not allowed on new buildings in the city. The building is within the allowable percentages if you evaluate the entire building elevation, existing and new, for the percentage of stucco that we would allow, which is the proposed material on the addition.
So are you saying that if this was, so if this was any other building, not just the back of Lester Mall, but any other new addition, would we require them to have a certain material, a level of material, tier material on that facade as well? Or would we say that the rest of it is meeting the percentage, therefore this doesn't?
The standard that we're looking at has more to do with the visual interest and compatibility standard than with the exterior building materials percentages and durability standard. It would be meeting that if it were, built new, the entire thing, or if it were just the addition that we're being evaluated, but
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Commissioners, further discussion or a motion? Commissioner Lukey.
I have a question for the applicant. So what material are you proposing instead of the brick and masonry that staff is asking for?
We're actually proposing to continue the band, as Peter was saying, with 2 different colors of stucco, one being a darker brown to kind of mimic the hue of the brick. The brick itself is a blended brick that was done in the 70s, so even if we maintain that, trying to match it would be very, very difficult because there's 4 different colors and there's about the ratios of what colors go where.
Are you talking stucco, or are you
No, I'm
stucco
talking the
panel?
brick.
Like a panel, like a cement board panel, or are you talking real stucco?
No, right now, you were asking about the band. That's right there. It's an EFS panel that's up there between
I'm
the
asking
brick
what you're
right now.
proposing, I'm sorry.
We're proposing just stucco with a different color stripe to match the band and then stucco. So it's going to be stucco, stucco, stucco.
Thank you.
Further questions, motions? Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I'll just get the discussion started with a motion. I'm going to move approval of items A and B, the conditional use permit and site plan review, and I will propose striking condition 7 from item B, the site plan review.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioners, any discussion? Commissioner Lukey.
I guess I'm in favor of the motion, except I'm a little bit concerned that it looks as though the addition's in line with the existing wall of the north wall, in which case I feel like the north wall at least should be of the same material, just so it's not so disjointed that it'll be 2 very different things right side by side in the same plane. But as for the west elevation, I'm fine with it switching materials because it's on a completely different elevation. So I guess that would be my perception, just so it doesn't look so disjointed.
I'm sorry, that is not a suggested amendment, that is just comment on.
It's a comment to see if there's interest in making it an amendment.
Very good. All right, any other discussion? All right, seeing no other discussion, we have a motion and a second to approve items A and B, striking condition number 7 from the site plan review. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown?
Aye.
Coleman? Aye. Cogill?
Aye.
Ellison?
Aye.
Cronzer?
Aye.
Lipkeeper?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Schrader?
Aye.
Sweezy?
Aye.
9-0.
And that motion passes. That concludes our items for item number 8. And we'll move on to item number 11. Staff is Aaron Hanauer, the timber project.
Good afternoon, Commission. So you briefly saw this project a few weeks ago for timber, 103rd Avenue North, 10-story mixed-use building at the intersection of 1st Street North and 3rd Avenue North. There's approximately there's 4,000 to 5,000 square feet of retail on the first floor and 9 floors of residential units. 66 units is the proposal currently. The only application in front of you is site plan review. The Heritage Preservation Commission in May unanimously approved the certificate of appropriateness for this building in the historic districts. So the applicant has looked to meet all the standards and only needs the required application of site plan review because of the Chapter 530 standards. We see this building fitting in with the current comp plan guidance and the small area plan, as it is a mixed-use building in this area that's calling for that, and the number of pedestrian improvements and being a well-designed building that is similar on all 4 sides. In the staff report for this version tonight, we did include the comments from the HPC in the report those that for and against the project. So I'm happy to answer questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Is the applicant in attendance? Yeah, please come up and state your name and address for the record and add anything further you see fit.
Todd Simning, lead developer of Timber, 2145 Windsong Lane in Chanhassen, Minnesota. And I don't actually have a whole lot to add besides we're really excited about the project. We weren't here a couple weeks ago because I had some pricing issues that I had to kind of come to terms with the subcontractors, which actually finally fell in line after I said I wasn't going to build it. And now I'm really excited to get things moving and move ahead. So I appreciate the working with Aaron from the city and appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions? All right. I would ask anybody else to come up to the microphone. And we have one testifier who has testified before, so please focus on new information. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ron Slawinski, 111 4th Avenue North, Unit 403. That's the Rock Island condominiums. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you at your last meeting and point out a couple of inconsistencies between the 2000 Minneapolis Master Plan, the 2010 North Loop Small Area Plan, and the 2020 Minneapolis Master Planning and the zoning of this particular parcel in the Old Warehouse District. You've received the report that we provided with the Heritage Preservation Committee, and I'm disappointed that that committee didn't take into account all of the information that was provided to them in regards to opposition to this project. There's significant neighborhood opposition. There's over 62 members of the Rock Island Condominium Association, the Fifth Avenue Condominium Association, and members of the River, I'm not sure what it is, a little place right by the river, the condominiums that are down in that area too. You've had a chance to look at the report, and we've referenced the Minnesota state law that we don't believe the council has followed in bringing zoning into compliance, and nor has anyone ever asked this developer other than ourselves, and we have not received a reply, why those long-term planning documents were not considered in planning this project. We believe a 6-story project is consistent with all of the Minneapolis and North Loop planning processes, and never once was that addressed why this isn't a 6-story project instead of a 10-story project. I'd also like to point out that not only is the site context not meeting the criteria of the Minneapolis Master Planning District, but the land use planning section 1.2.1 talks about scale and massing that are consistent with the context of the surrounding area, and all of the surrounding area is 5 stories or less. Also, the urban design policy 10.6.3 talks about preservation and enhancement of view corridors that focus attention on the downtown skyline. This dramatically interrupts those view corridors for many of the buildings in the North Loop area. Also 10.11.3 that through master planning and zoning regulation, that should be the guidance that the citizenship of the city relies on to move their interests forward, and we don't believe this project does that at this scale. Every other criteria, we're very much in support of this project. We just believe the scale is wrong at 10 stories. Thanks for listening to us.
Very good, thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, we have one item for us, site plan review. Does anybody want to start us off with a motion or discussion? Commissioner Kranzer.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the site plan review with the 6 stated conditions.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Commissioners, any discussion? Commissioner Kranzer.
I think, we have one item in front of us, which is a site plan review. It does not deal with the height of the building. And likewise, the zoning code does not regulate views from private property outward. So this building is quite well designed, and I think it meets a lot of our goals for the site plan.
Other discussion, commissioners? I would just piggyback on Commissioner Kronzer's comments that our authority is pretty limited here to even consider anything outside of site plan review because we don't review projects, we review specific applications, which limits the scope of our review. Seeing no other discussion, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown?
Aye.
Coleman? Aye. Colgill?
Aye.
Ellison? Aye. Cronzer?
Aye.
Lipke-Peer?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Schrader?
Aye.
Sweezy?
Aye.
9-0.
That motion carries. Next up is item number 14, 2701, 2707, 2709, and 2715 Girard Avenue South. Staff is Hillary DeBark.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is 27th and Girard Apartments. You saw this at a June Committee of the Whole meeting. At that Committee of the Whole meeting, this was a 6-story building with many applications that were required. They took your feedback. They went back and talked to the neighborhood as well. And they have come in with a 4-story building tonight. They still do require several applications, however, not as many, and the building is much more in line with the guidance of the current zoning and then the future comp plan, which had been part of our conversation at the Committee of the Whole meeting. So they do require several applications. The project is an 85-unit, 4-story residential building with 50 underground parking spaces. Those parking spaces are all accessed from a single vehicle door along the alley. They have amenity spaces for the residents on the ground floor and then up on the 4th floor. And up on that 4th floor, they have pulled that southwest corner of the building back to allow for that rooftop deck. The materials that are on the building, it is a brick, primarily brick building with some burnished block along the alley and then 3 different colors of metal panel. The building is uniform. It does meet all of our site plan review standards, and so I won't be touching on any of those as no alternative compliance is required. They do have an FAR variance from 2.4 to 2.5. It's an increase of 2,310 square feet. They are located half of a block off of Hennepin Avenue, 2 blocks from the activity center at Hennepin and Lake. They are 2 blocks from that Uptown Transit Center and then also the Midtown Greenway. All of these land use features in our current comp plan call for medium to high density housing. And to achieve that density, they are asking for the FAR variance, and we are supporting that tonight. They do also require a variance of lot coverage from 70 to 78%. It is a difference in this case of 2,011 square feet. To maximize the footprint of the building to achieve those 50 parking spaces in the required maneuvering area, they have increased the footprint and asked for that variance, and we are supportive of that variance as well. They do have yard variances on all 4 sides, 3 of which are for the building. 1 is for a transformer. This is Girard Avenue on your site plan. 27th is north, so north is up. They have a variance of this front yard setback from 23 feet, down to, I'm losing my numbers. From 23 feet to what the building setback is. Here I am reducing them. This structure at 2717 is 23 feet back. The district setback is 15, and so they are asking to reduce that setback down to 8 feet in this corner to here, and then the doors at this end come into 10. So that setback along Girard varies in and out, and then there is also a patio that goes up to 0 feet and a stack of balconies that sits over that main entrance here. We are recommending approval. The 2 buildings to the south on this block are outliers on the block. All of the other buildings, all of the other multifamily residential buildings are located up to Girard, and so these 2 buildings are kind of a pocket, if you will, inside of that block. They are asking for a corner side yard setback along 27th. There is a single family house that sits on the block to the east. That house is located approximately 5 feet from that corner side property line. They do have a 6-foot fence that encloses the entire rear yard that is located up to or maybe over that corner side property line. And we are recommending approval of that variance. They do then have a variance of this south interior property line for the transformer from 5 down to 2 feet. This is a parking area. In this neighborly house, there's approximately 35 feet between the house and where that transformer is located. We are recommending approval of that variance. They do have a variance along the alley from 11 feet down to between 8 and 11 feet for the building. That portion of the building that is closer than 11 feet is that portion where that underground garage sits. On top of that garage is green space and then individual patios, very small patios for those first floor dwelling units along the alley. They do also then need variances for some stacks of balconies that they have along the alley, but we are also supporting that. Those balconies are at least 5 feet in depth, which we have heard is a good depth for balconies. So we are supporting all of those applications, and I will stand for any questions.
Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Carnes.
I have one question, just a clarification about the variance for the setback along the alley. The main building wall does not meet the variance, but it's the balconies and it's the enclosed parking area that's the first floor. Correct. Basically, the main bulk of the building doesn't need that variance.
Correct. I'll show you on the side elevation. So this is the elevation along 27th. So the building wall here is 11 feet. It's this portion of the building that goes down to that lower number, and then the balconies stack above that.
Other questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you, Hillary. We'll open the public hearing and ask the applicant to introduce yourself. State your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. Sheldon Berg with DJR Architecture, 333 Washington Avenue North. I think Hillary covered the vast majority of the items. I'd probably reiterate that through some meetings with obviously the committee of the whole and with the neighborhood, we had reduced the size of the project from 6 to 4. The project that you have before you is I think our best efforts in terms of meeting the guide or the goals of the comprehensive plan, as well as meeting the context of the neighboring buildings up and down both Girard and 27th. Excuse me. I don't think I have many additional items to add at this point, but I'd stand for questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else who wishes to testify, please come to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
Michael Kopacek. I own the building at 2722 Girard. I'd just like to say that I don't think it's proper that we change all of our setbacks for the building. I don't think that 50 parking spaces for 85 units is enough. And I'm afraid that while they're building it and after they're building it, I'm going to lose renters in my triplex that I've kept up to code for almost 40 years now. So I think we should really sit down, take a good look at what we're doing, whether we really even need this building. The buildings along that street are 100 to 140 years old. We're throwing away pieces of history here. We got plenty of room up in the inner corridor for those monster buildings. We don't need it there.
Thank you very much. Please state your name and address for the record.
I prepared my remarks because this isn't easy doing this. My name is Margaret Reinhardt, also known as Peggy. I live at 2733 Girard Avenue South on the same block as this proposed apartment building. I've lived there for over 19 years. And I've been an advocate for affordable housing for many more years. I retired from General Mills and I have been a literacy tutor at Jefferson Elementary School, which is 1 block from this proposed housing. Some children there are bused to Jefferson from homeless shelters. Our school district is actively seeking stable housing for families. And seniors in the neighborhood would like to move out of their large houses but can't find senior housing. You may know the senior condo building at 28th and Hennepin is 35 years old. Some people have lived there the entire time, and it's full. I've known for some time that these 4 lots would be developed, and I'm glad to see more housing. But I'm disappointed that the developer has apparently turned down city's incentive to make some units affordable, a certain percent of them. And it does not meet our city's needs for family and senior housing. I doubt that children were in the minds of the developers. I know that today's hearing is about legal finding of facts, so I'll simply say I object. Too many variances. But affordable housing still remains a concern. Our city's mission is to serve all the public, not just the demographics targeted by developers. You know that better than I. But that means housing for people with less money, children, disabled, elderly. So I really would state, I'm for more housing, but it needs to be affordable. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Is anybody else wishing to testify? Please come to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Melissa Jean. I live at 2715 Girard Avenue South. I am one of the houses they're proposing to remove as part of this new development. I object, obviously. It's a beautiful house. I rent it, so they obviously own it. It's over 100 years old. The amount of stained glass that's in the house is beautiful. In addition, parking in that area is terrible right now, and it's just the 4 houses, and then you want to add an apartment complex on top of that. I understand that we're going to be more towards biking and, public transportation, and I'm all for that. But right now, we need to think about, there is no parking. 27th is crowded. You can't get down the street in the winter, especially. Back alley, you can't get in the back alley unless you have an SUV. So I don't know how this is going to work. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else wishing to testify on this item? Please come to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, I'm Doug Milbroth. We own a property at 2637 Girard South. So that would be 4 units down, or 3 units down from us. Well, first of all, there are 4 brownstones. One has a occupancy of probably 2,800 or 28 units. The one next to me has 12 units. The one across the street from us has probably 24 units. Where are they going to park? What about the foot traffic? I mean, 84 units in this area is really a little bit much. Now, I talked to Hillary, who was somewhat rude to me, and asked about an impact statement. Apparently, an impact statement wasn't done for that area. Is that true? No one can answer, huh?
I would defer that question to staff once you're done. My belief that the size of this project probably doesn't trigger an impact statement.
84 units?
Correct. 400 units triggers an impact statement.
400 units?
Correct.
Well, you're going to completely destroy the character of that area in there. Now, we've owned, like I said, we've owned that unit it's a triplex. I rent it out as a duplex because I don't want the traffic there for approximately 20-some years. Now, I know there's a demand for housing in that area, but along Lyndale, along Lake Street, that's all housing there. Can anybody tell me what the average cost of the unit is going to be for rent?
It's not part of our jurisdiction.
So we're here today just to decide, we're going to vote if the planning commission would allow this, the variances that would have to be in place for this unit.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Kimber,
I'll just, as a correction to my previous statement, it's 375 units that triggers a mandatory EAW in the city of Minneapolis.
thank you. Commissioner Luke Fair.
Yeah, I just had not really a question for the last speaker, but just so you're aware of the things that we can and can't take into consideration in our quasi-judicial nature of this. There's a number of variances, and in order for us to consider the variances and go against staff recommendation, we have to determine the practical difficulties are the legal findings we have to make, and then the site plan review. So parking, unfortunately, isn't one of the things we can consider today because they aren't asking for anything that isn't already given to them by right, given the current ordinances in the city. So if you or anyone that you are with wants to discuss the practical difficulties as they relate to the variances, that would be very helpful for us, but unfortunately we can't consider what the unit rents for or the parking situation because they aren't required to provide more than they are providing. So I just wanted to, we're not up here not listening to, but we are limited in what we can consider in making our decision.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, we have a number of variances before us and site plan review. Does anybody wish to start us off with a motion or discussion? FAR, lot coverage, several setback variances, and site plan review. Commissioner Coleman.
If appropriate, I would make a motion to approve all of the variances.
We have a motion to approve items A, B, C, D, E, and F. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve items A, B, C, D, E, and F. Any discussion? Is that a discussion tag? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Brown?
Aye.
Coleman?
Aye.
Colville?
Aye.
Ellison?
Aye.
Kranzer?
Aye.
Lipke Pier?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
Schrader?
Aye.
Squeezy? Aye. 9-0.
We have one item remaining, site plan review. Commissioner Coleman.
I would make a motion to approve item G, site plan review with the 4 stated conditions.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion, Commissioner Kranzer?
Just one comment with the lighting plan. I'd like to make sure that the step lights and the things you have along the sidewalk that are downcast and not shining out. I'm not sure exactly what the light fixture you have in there, but having downcast lights really help keep glare down to a minimum, keep visibility for safety reasons. So thank you.
Any other discussion? I will say, before taking the vote on this, so in terms of the parking issue, as Commissioner Lipke here pointed out, we do not have jurisdiction over that. There's not a variance required. And there is a strong push in the city from a policy perspective to encourage and support biking, walking, transit use. There is along Hennepin Avenue, right along this stretch, some of the first protected bus lanes coming in, and we have a lot more to do, but that is kind of both the policy direction and some of the practical changes there. In terms of affordability, as I indicated to the gentleman asking about the rents, we don't have jurisdiction over that. There are policies in the works at the city to strengthen our inclusionary housing policies, which would place a higher requirement than currently exists for affordable housing. And so if that's something you're concerned about, that's an avenue to to get involved and then give this commission and the city council greater authority over those issues. With that, Commissioner Lipke-Peer.
Yeah, I just wanted to add too for the speakers who talked about the quality housing that's on the site and the beautiful architecture. That again, we can't control what people do with the current buildings on the site. I mean, other areas in the country do have mandatory deconstruction or offer to move it, and I guess I would encourage the applicant to at least be mindful of that. It is a sustainability issue in my opinion, but again, not in the current purview given the tools we are allowed to utilize in this venue. So I will be supporting the site plan review, but I just want you to know that it's not out of our awareness that this is a limited resource that's potentially going to waste for nothing. So I would say encouraging to the applicant to look into that. We can't condition it currently given the rules we have at our disposal, but at least consider the fact that a lot of embodied energy went into the creation of those structures and to not let it go to waste.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on item G, site plan review. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown?
Aye.
Coleman?
Aye.
Cogill?
Aye.
Ellison?
Aye.
Cronzer?
Aye.
Lipke-Peer?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Schrader?
Aye.
Sweezy?
Aye.
9-0.
And that concludes item number 14. Moving on to item number 15, 1011 to 1027 Main Street Northeast, 1010 to 1016 2nd Street Northeast. Back to you, Peter.
All right, our next project is located in the St. Anthony West neighborhood at the addresses 1011 through 1027 Main Street Northeast and 1011 through 1016 2nd Street Northeast. Several applications for a new residential project in this location. The existing site includes 5 parcels that today contain single and 2-family homes. The applicant is proposing to demolish those to construct a new 5-story residential building with 175 dwelling units. There's 2 projects that we're going to discuss tonight back to back that are located across the street from each other, across Main Street in the same neighborhood. This one concerns the East project, which is on the right-hand side of this slide, highlighted in yellow. You can see some of the adjoining land use features in this map. Both projects are kind of wrapped on the north and west side by the Greenbelt Activity Center. And then there are at least 2 relevant community corridors, 2nd Street Northeast and Broadway Avenue, that adjoin both of the sites. 2nd Street Northeast is a high-frequency transit corridor. So the proposal before you on the east property involves a conditional use permit to exceed the maximum building height in the existing R5 zoning district to go from 4 stories 56 feet to 5 stories 86 feet. There's also a variance to the maximum floor area ratio from 2.4 to 2.95. If we look at the site plan, the applicant is also requesting some yard variances. The variance along Main Street is from 24 feet to 8 feet. It's worth noting that the setback in that location varies from the north to the south. Along the south part of the Main Street elevation, the building is set back 20 feet to respond to the existing established front yards of single-family residences immediately to the south of the property. And then that tapers closer to the property line as you move towards Broadway, which has a more urban character. Along Broadway Avenue, the applicant's requesting a variance to reduce the corner side yard setback from 15 feet to 0 feet. There are balconies on the eastern part of the Broadway elevation that encroach upon the public right-of-way. And then there's a plaza amenity feature that has a seating wall that goes directly up to the property line, and then a principal entrance facing Broadway as well. On the eastern elevation along 2nd Street Northeast, the applicant is requesting a variance to the front yard requirement. Because this is a through lot, the project actually has 2 front yards, one along Main Street and one along 2nd Street Northeast. So the variance along 2nd is to reduce the requirement from 19 feet to 1 foot. That 19 feet is a reference to the established front yard of the adjacent residential property. Again, on this elevation, the applicant is proposing a more significant setback along the south part of the 2nd Street elevation to respond to that existing residential context. There's also a variance to reduce the minimum loading requirement from 1 small space for a residential building that has more than 100 units to 0 spaces. The applicant has provided a narrative in their application about how they intend to handle moving in and moving out, which is the primary loading requirement of a residential-only property. And then there's a variance to increase the maximum lot coverage from 70% to 76%. Again, that is a function of the building responding to some varying contexts on the site, a more urban context along Broadway that calls for a project to be built up closer to the property line, and then a more lower scale residential context to the south. And then, of course, site plan review. That's a summary of the applications that we're seeking tonight. Staff is recommending approval with a couple of conditions. There's a rideshare drop-off space that would not be allowed by ordinance on the southwestern portion of the site, which we're asking to be removed. And then some other more standard conditions. So I can take questions, or we can hear from the applicant.
Commissioners, are the questions for staff? Commissioner Lupke-Peer.
Yeah, Peter, I had a question on the east elevation, North 2nd Street. Is there a reason why there's a really long blank wall on the side of the 3 parking spaces that would face 2nd? Because it looks as though there's not, it's on the 1st floor, and it's not that far from the street that I would think that it would be something we would ordinarily overlook. Next page, yep. It looks faded, but it doesn't look as though it's really much more than 15 feet setback.
Yeah, that wall is facing the interior of a parking garage, and I believe that there would be landscaping along that to, in particular, to screen the mechanical equipment there that might obscure that elevation, but I guess I would defer to the applicant if they have other thoughts about how to meet that.
Great, thank you.
Commissioners, any more questions? Seeing none, thank you, Peter. I will open the public hearing and ask the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Jason Lord from Solheim Companies. I live at 3532 Fremont Avenue. And thanks, Peter, for the presentation. I just have a couple quick remarks, and then I'll be a resource for any questions that you have. The site is, and our building is designed to serve as a transition from the really high-frequency arterial street of Broadway to the single-family neighborhood homes to the south. So it's a design problem that we've worked hard to solve. We've met with the neighborhood group a couple times, and a lot of the street frontage along Broadway is designed to really engage the street, reinforce the urban wall. It's the exact same height as the building across the street that was built maybe a decade ago. And some of the variances are to engage the corners of Broadway to help assist in natural traffic calming and activate the intersections of the street. And then we have stepped back to match all existing front yards with 4-story brick ends of the building to serve as that transition towards the single-family houses. This site was designated in the St. Anthony West Small Area Plan as an area to be redeveloped as high-density housing. And to really build the site into the neighborhood, we've designed a public pocket park along Broadway. Right now, the conditions are really harsh along Broadway. And this we've seen is enhance the landscaping and pedestrian activity and to perform a break from the street. We're also proposing boulevard trees as well along Broadway. And we've really focused the landscaping to heavily blend the building into the neighborhood. Next to the adjacent lot lines that came up were dense landscaping and trees to as alternative compliance for the parking garage, which is exposed as the building shifts from 2nd Street, which is a story higher than Main Street on site. And this, we met with the Stano neighborhood. We're continuing to meet with them for a historic monument for the history of the neighborhood on the intersection of Main and 11th. We're also meeting with traffic to see what we can do with that intersection, because it's a remnant from when Main Street was closed off maybe 50 years ago. And we've also gotten neighborhood support from the Stano neighborhood. They did vote to support the variances 6-5 last week. And all of our buildings, we've really tried to blend and incorporate into the city neighborhoods, you know, with landscaping, with lots of sustainable features. And with that, I'll leave it to questions. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else who wishes to testify, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Biernat. I live at 701 Main Street Northeast. I've lived in the St. Anthony West neighborhood for over 30 years. My question, I guess, is as a planning commission, do you have a specific guidelines for how many new units can be built on each block in each neighborhood? Is that part of your, that's nothing? You don't. I noticed you talked about the fact that it had to have 375 units to do an impact study. Is that in one building? Well, that's kind of sad because there are now 4 buildings right in a row. We've got the Julia, which is 98 units. We've got the, we will have these other 2 buildings, which is 175 and 113. And then we have the 69 Catholic elder care units, and they're all in a row. And it's kind of like a big tunnel because it's going to take up pretty much all of Broadway. I really think it's important to think of that as a total amount of space. I just did some math too on how many more new units are in the area. We have over 1,096 units in this area, and it doesn't take into consideration, these are mostly apartment buildings, takes into consideration no duplexes, no triplexes, no fourplexes, which this working class neighborhood has always had. And they made a great effort to keep it working class, to make it affordable for people. And these apartment buildings, I can tell you, it's $1,100 for a studio, it's $1,300 to $1,500 for a 1-bedroom, and it's probably $1,600 to $1,800 for a 2-bedroom. Our board did vote 5-6. That isn't a winning victory. So I just want to say enough is enough. We really need to start thinking about our neighborhoods. I know that Heather Worthington said, we really want to examine and recognize the relationship between built form in the city and the social fabric of the community. This is destroying the fabric of our community. The 2040 plan says that developers of large residential buildings have to have a certain percentage of units affordable. Our neighborhood requested that we have 8 affordable units to replace the 8 houses being torn down. Those single-family houses, we have families in the neighborhood who would love to do nothing better than to move into them. But they can't because they're going to be developed. Our developers here admitted they would not be doing either project if they had to follow the guidelines of the 2040 plan. I guess I just want to say, I think we are hitting a tipping point. I think we have hit a tipping point. I hear about density. And I hear about all these different projects being done in all these different neighborhoods and the suburbs. Is Minneapolis doing anything to coordinate with those suburbs how much we're building and how much we need? I mean, really, it is a conglomerate number that we have to take into consideration, just not here and there. And Minneapolis doesn't have to do it all on its own. So I just hope that you will think about that. And as far as the variance, I guess I did have one question here. The recommendation is to approve it's different from 4 stories to 56 units, 5 stories, 56 feet to 5 stories to 86 feet. Now, each of those 4 stories are 18 feet. And if you add another story, it's 74 feet. How do we get to 86 feet? That's my question.
We can ask the developer to come back after other folks have come up to testify. Please come up to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
And I would have done a PowerPoint, but our neighborhood meeting area doesn't have all of this nice setup, so I had to do a little bit more crafty work today. I'm Emily Scott. I live at Main Street Bungalows, 814 Main Street, and I'm the president of our association. Sheila and Kathy back there are both my neighbors. We're both against both of these projects. I know you said earlier about the parking, so I'm not going to even bring it up. And mostly I want to bring up the aesthetics of the building and how they're trying to say that it looks and has a feel of a neighborhood. There's a lot of studios in that apartment. That's a lot of transient neighbors. That's a lot of people that move in and move out. They're not going to stay. There's no room to have kids in a 385 square foot studio apartment. We have a gentleman on our neighborhood council meeting. He's got 3 kids and a single dad, and he's irate, and I'm sorry that he's not here today because he said he would never be able to afford that. And one of the developers said, well, maybe we can make a deal for you, like giving him a handout. He wasn't asking for a handout. We're asking for some affordable quality housing. And I was very insulted by them at the last meeting at our neighborhood council meeting that they would not do this plan if they had to comply with 2040. So you got a little picture of their building here. I also have a picture that looks very similar, and I will show it to everybody. That's the housing for Pripyat outside of Chernobyl, and it looks very similar to their building that they are planning on building in my neighborhood. And I'm sorry that I called it a prison before. I was wrong. I found the better picture. Thank you. And I hope you don't approve this because this is going to ruin our neighborhood.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to testify? Please state your name and address for the record.
Certainly, Diane Hofstad, 610 Ramsey. I'm speaking today in opposition of this housing project for all the reasons that have been stated from my neighbors. But I particularly want to emphasize the lack of parking, the conflict within transit, and the infrastructure. We have an old infrastructure in an old historic neighborhood, and I'm concerned that we haven't paid attention to that. The question I'm asking for all of you, I would imagine some of you are parents, I know you are, is where will children play? What kind of experience will they have living in this building? Will they run up and down the halls, up and down the streets? Where are they going? And you'll say, well, they're going to our parks. Maybe. Is that within I's view of their family? I find it ironic that we're talking about how important affordable housing is, and we agree. In our neighborhood, we've worked really, really hard to have affordable housing, and we're removing affordable housing. It doesn't make any sense. In the Mississippi watershed, in the area that's critical to our parks, to our water, to our environment, and in the Mississippi flyover zone, where 500,000 birds and insects fly. I'm glad they're going to have a high building to land on. I just hope you take this into account when you're making recommendations. So what do we need? We need more green space. These guys have done buildings. They know how to do this. They can provide more green space. They can design a building that is in character of a neighborhood. They can design a building that is less dense, that is not, I hate to use this word, but it seems greedy. They could be more sharing with their resources so we can share with ours. So I just ask you to think about, where will children play? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please come to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Kathy Heidelberg. I live at 1008 Main Street Northeast, which is 2 doors down from the West building that I'm not happy about. I've lived in my neighborhood, in my house, for over 32 years. And now I'm worried about the 4 of us that own our own houses. We have nothing anymore. We have no privacy. We have no parking. We have nothing. So I want to know what we get out of this, which is nothing. My biggest concern is the affordable housing, of course, like everybody else. But I'm also worried about eminent domain. How long will I be able to stay in my house without being kicked out by the city, the planning commission, or the developers? Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to testify? Please come to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Linnea Gotterstedt. I'm at 224 3rd Avenue Northeast. I live in St. Anthony West as well. I'm in favor of the proposed development at Main Street Apartments East and West, which I know is kind of a separate item, but both. I'm excited to see more neighbors added to my neighborhood. I think the site is good for multi-unit at this scale because it's near high-frequency transit lines. And I think the residents who would move in would be able to commute and run errands without needing a car as often, which would be great. So it's a good spot for that and would help reduce our city's carbon footprint. I think that one of the things I like about the design is that it's going to improve the walkability along Broadway that borders the property, which I think is a good thing. I think that adding more homes can take some pressure off the housing market and can be one piece of what helps make housing more affordable in the city. And for all those reasons, I like the project and I'm in favor. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Last call. Seeing nobody, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, we have a number of variances, conditional use permit, and site plan review before us. Anybody like to start us off with a motion or discussion or questions? Commissioner Kronzer.
There was that question about height versus stories.
There was a question about height versus stories, and I did look through here, and the answer to that is the elevator overrun. The height to the top of the roof is 66 feet, and then we have another 20 feet for overrun and so forth. So that gives our height to the roof. Commissioner Lupke here. Yeah, and I just wanted to just address a couple of things I heard about affordability and concerns about eminent domain. Just really quickly, although 2040 is very much in favor of increasing affordable housing, unfortunately, none of the policies, in fact, it hasn't formally been adopted. So we aren't even acting under 2040 yet as a planning commission. But when it does, that component
won't take effect until the inclusionary zoning policy's been written and adopted by council, which probably won't happen until 6 months from now, maybe-ish. So it's coming. Unfortunately, it's not a tool we have in our toolbox right now, but it is in theory coming. On the eminent domain, I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you that when we've discussed the topic with staff and with the city attorneys that talk about land use, it's not a tool that is used very often anymore. It's much more restricted than it has been in decades past. Even so, do have peace of mind that that's not something that at least in my experience, will be on the horizon for you. This will not impact that for you. So breathe a little bit easier, knowing that one thing is not happening. But I do hear you, and I found your photos really interesting, so thank you.
Commissioners, further questions, comments, motions? Clarifications. Commissioner Brown.
And just to continue the discussion, I'm going to move approval of all items A through H.
All right, we have
item H, the site plan review has 7 stated conditions. I should mention the conditional use permit has 1 stated condition.
Very good. So we have a motion for approval of items A through H, including all stated conditions on item A and item H. It's a conditional use permit, series of variances, and site plan review. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Commissioner Sweezy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say something to the neighbors who spoke against this, and I don't know if this will make you feel any better or not. I'm sure it won't, but it's not lost on me. I know how close this was at your neighborhood association, just barely squeaking through, and I think this is happening in so many areas of the city. If you were here to hear the one in Uptown just before this, and one thing I usually say to people, and parking isn't our thing, we don't get to decide that, but at least it has some. Many projects that we approve have none at all. And I do think that your neighborhood has had more than its fair share of these really escalated projects coming through. I would put, I bet the Marcy Homes people might beg to differ and think that they've had the brunt of it, but it's not lost on me that that's happening. The thing is, it's happening in pretty much every neighborhood where people want to live. And it's hard for us to separate out when we hear the complaints from people who don't want it in Uptown, or at least it is for me, and Prospect Park and Marcy Homes and all this, when the policy direction from the city really is to support this density everywhere, and it just is. And tonight it's your neighborhood and your street that's getting it, but these projects do continue to get approved, and for me at least it's important to be consistent with that and not pick one neighborhood over the other. I will be voting in support of it, and as I said, if I were sitting where you were, it might not make me feel any better, but at least I hear you. I hear that. I've driven over there, and as you go further down Marshall, I think it's even crazier a little bit, and I wish I had some solutions for you, but I guess the best I can offer is that in every neighborhood of the city where people want to live, this is what we continue to see.
Thank you. Commissioner Lupke-Peer.
I just wanted to ask if it's okay to add a friendly amendment, add a condition 8 to site plan review, directing the applicant to work with staff to add elements to bring the east elevation along Northeast 2nd Street into compliance with our blank wall provision, because it wasn't addressed in the alternative compliance. And since it faces a front street, I think it's important that that be dealt with more than just with landscaping. So it has to be something beyond that, if that's all right.
I am fine with that amendment. Maybe we want some direction from staff, though, if we should formalize that amendment if we're adding a condition. Work with staff. But I'm certainly fine with it.
What's the word, Kimberly? Should we vote to approve that?
I think that language is fine if you're accepting it as an amendment.
Very good. We'll add on that friendly amendment to item H. the applicant should work with staff to address the blank wall. Commissioner Ellison.
Hi, it's not lost on me, the struggles that the neighborhood is going through. I have a hard time, I don't know, personally accepting is in 6 months, in a year, this would not be allowed in this neighborhood based on the 2040 review. I think I'll be abstaining from this. I know it falls within the plan currently set out by the city, but I think I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Thank you very much. Other commissioners, discussion on the motion before us. Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Brown?
Aye.
Coleman?
Aye.
Colville?
Aye.
Kranzer?
Aye.
Lipke-Peer?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Schrader?
Aye.
Sweezy? Aye. 8-0.
Though that motion carries, that concludes our discussion of our business with item number 15. On to item number 16, which is Peter as well.
And item number 16 is located at 1018 through 1024 Main Street Northeast. This is directly across the street from the previous proposal that we were looking at. The proposal incorporates 3 existing parcels that, again, today contain single and 2-family homes. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing structures in order to construct a new 5-story residential building with 113 dwelling units on the site. This site has frontage on 11th Avenue Northeast as well as Main Street Northeast, and it does have a shared alley with the other properties on the site. Again, showing the adjacent land use context, the project that we're considering now is the yellow highlighted project to the at the center of the slide. And then an image of the proposed project. For this proposal, the project requires a conditional use permit to exceed the maximum building height in the R5 district to go from 4 stories 56 feet to 50 stories 80 feet. I'll clarify that the height to the top of the roof on this proposal is 60 feet, so that 80 feet does incorporate the elevator overrun. The applicant is also seeking several variances, variance to increase the maximum floor area ratio from 2.4 to 2.99, a variance to reduce the minimum front yard requirement along Main Street Southeast from 15 feet to 8 feet. Again, this is responding to some of the established urban contexts. The established yard of structures immediately to the south is somewhat closer to the property line than the minimum front yard requirement in the underlying zoning district. The applicant is also proposing several patios in the Main Street front yard that exceed the maximum size in a required yard. Staff is supportive of that request. And then there is a variance to the corner side yard along 11th Avenue Southeast from 15 feet to 6 feet. The 11th Avenue Northeast elevation faces a commercial property and is adjacent to the Grain Belt Activity Center, which has a more urban character than some of the residential properties immediately to the south. There's also a variance to reduce the minimum interior side yard requirement along the south property line for balconies. We are returning that variance as the applicant has agreed to modify the design of the balconies such that they do not encroach into the yard or exceed the maximum height. There is, similar to the first project, a variance to reduce the minimum loading requirement from 1 small space to 0 spaces, and then, of course, the site plan review. I'll let the applicant speak to some of the more specific design qualities of the building. It's worth noting that on this project, as on the previous project, the building steps down from 5 stories to 4 stories along the south elevation such that along that property line it meets the maximum height requirement in the R5 district to respond to some of the lower scale residential uses. And I can take any questions if there are any.
Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I would ask the applicant to come to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
Jason Lord, 3532 Fremont Avenue in Minneapolis. Thank you, Peter, for the presentation. We had similar design considerations in this project, but a very unique site and circumstance where Main Street does not connect with Broadway. So it loops around and becomes 11th Street. So really the corner of this project was designed to anchor a very active intersection on the corner of an activity district that really doesn't exist, that is more sort of an interstate slip turn. And we're working with the city of Minneapolis to add crosswalks to really pedestrianize that intersection. But this building, we wanted to have activity on that intersection for maximum security, eyes on the street, to really make it engaging with the urban district. And then we wanted to blend with the residences down the block. So the building transitions from a modern form that's all glass common areas at that intersection to a traditional brick form that's 4 stories with brick detailing to relate to other brick details in the neighborhood. And I'll be here for any questions.
Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I would open the public hearing. Anybody who wishes to testify, please come to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
Sheila Biernat, 701 Main Street, Northeast Minneapolis. I just had a minor addition. That 1,096 units that I talked to you about earlier, that does not include these 288 units going in. So we're actually looking at around 1,300 units in that area. And then I keep hearing, this is just a comment, I keep hearing more eyes on the street. I'm just wondering, we're getting more and more dense, but I don't feel like we are getting safer. So that's just my comment to go along with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to testify? Please state your name and address for the record.
Emily Scott, 814 Main Street, Main Street Bungalows. Again, I disapprove of this building as well. But I do ask, since it's obviously going to be approved, that we've asked the contractors to, there's going to be a walkway in between the alley, in between one of the, that butts up to the house. And we've asked them to put a gate on the alley so that it's not a walk-through, because there is a bar right across the street, right across the alley from that. And I've also asked them to shuttle their workers in and lease a parking lot someplace, because where I live, there's an apartment building that one of their friends owns that's been under construction for a year and a half, and it's ridiculous. They get to park, they've cut off 9th, you can't park on 9th, and then they also park in the alley, so then they cut off the alley. So again, I've asked them to lease a lot someplace and shuttle their employees in when they're building this, since again, you're obviously going to approve it. Thank you.
Commissioner Luke Dupierre.
I have a question for the last speaker. Yeah, just a real quick question about that walkway alongside the private property there. I assume you're talking about the kind of curvy, wavy one. There you go, at the bottom?
So right at the bottom, where you can see there's a house right at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then there's a walkway, and that goes into the alley. So where I live is a 6-unit condominium complex. It's actually 2 condemned homes that were done 10 years ago or so, or 12 years ago now. And we have a really nice, I guess, common area that people liked to walk through. So we had to put a gate on the alley so people would stop doing that.
So is your preference a gate, or is your preference no sidewalk?
Well, I would say no sidewalk, but if they're going to put a sidewalk in there, they have to put a gate on the end. Have to.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else wishing to testify? Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure, Diane Hofstad, 610 Ramsey. I'm just going to be consistent with the people who opposed this for the same reason that they've opposed. And I encourage all of you to look at ways in which this project could be a better project, more consistent with the neighborhood and the traditions of the neighborhood. And of course, the idea of not having a gate, not having a walkway is consistent with another project that was done, Kitty, actually across the street from the Greenbelt Brewery. So there's precedent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to testify? Last call. Please state your name and address for the record.
Kathy Heidelberg, 1008 Main Street Northeast. I have the same thing. This is 2 doors down from me, the one right next door, and I'm right next door to the other one. I used to know my neighbors. I used to know every single one of my neighbors on the 2 blocks. There are only 4 of us now that own our houses. I know nobody in my neighborhood anymore, and I'm afraid that that's going to happen even worse, so you don't know who's supposed to be there and who's not. Like I said, I've lived in the neighborhood over 32 years and lived in my house, and I worked hard for it, and I'm just very disappointed with the city council and this planning commission for all the things going on that the neighborhoods don't even get to see until it's already happened. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, we have a number of applications before us. Commissioner Luke Bupier.
I have a question for the applicant. Hi, so since the units aren't walk-up units, can you explain what the purpose of the walkway is? Because I concur, I think I know how the sidewalk's going to smell after about a month.
Sure, and that would, so the walkway is really for pet owners or for the units themselves it's not the primary entrance, it's a secondary entrance to the patio. And it also does, we find those walk-up units connects the units more towards the neighborhood. I think a gate is something that we could certainly consider adding, or eliminating the end connection of the patio so that it only works forward to Main.
How deep are those patios?
Those patios, I believe, are 5 feet deep.
I mean, do you think that it's better for your residents to have 5 feet to have a couple chairs, or have more depth to actually enjoy the backyard and not have people wandering through?
So we designed the landscaping specifically so that it feels like a garden walkway, and so that relates to the curving shape of it and the connection. And also each patio is wide enough so that we have a chair dining area or another place to the side of the walkway through it.
Chair dining area and a 5 foot deep patio?
For a little bistro table. A lot of people do the IKEA or sort of the modern tables out there next to their patios.
Will the gate have like key card access or something so no one just wanders through who doesn't belong there? I'm just thinking of a septet sort of thing. If I had a unit there, I'd be nervous.
And I think one of the good concerns is we are next to a bar, and we've taken that into account with the design of it. So I think, better than a gate would be to stop that patio from connecting to the alley space. So we'd certainly consider that as an amendment, or adding a gate along Main Street.
I would say, just do what needs to get done to prevent that from happening. I don't know what the answer is, but it seems like a few different concerns that are caused by this pathway. So, thanks.
Commissioners, we have a number of applications before us. Does anybody have a motion or further questions or discussion? Conditional use permit, several variances, site plan review. Commissioner Brown.
And I'll move approval of items A, B, C, D, F, and G.
Commissioner, we have a motion for items A through G. Is the item E was in there as well?
Item E is a return, so I was going to
Item E is a return, yes, okay, very good. Items A through G, accepting item E. Do we have a second? Motion on the table for item A, conditional use permit, item B, item C, item D, item F, and item G with 7 stated conditions.
Just a clarification.
Correct.
So on the electronic version, the return variance is item F. So if we could make it clear in the record that the variance to the interior side yard setback requirement is the return, regardless of what letter it is. Yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Do we have 7 total?
Conditional use permit on this is 1 instead of A. Online, it's A. But on the printed one, it got printed.
No.
No, ours is the
Okay.
same as yours,
No,
Kimberly. Theirs is wrong. The printed ones have it right.
It's different.
It's different.
Give us a moment.
So
We'll confer here.
and maybe I'll just spell this out a little more
many
clearly.
are?
So I'm moving approval of item A, the conditional use permit with the 1 stated condition, item B, the FAR variance, item C, the variance for the front yard requirement variance, the variance for the minimum corner side yard setback, the variance to the minimum loading requirement, and the site plan review.
Very good. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Lipke-Peer.
Yeah, just not that I'm adding friendly amendments to all of your things tonight, Commissioner Brown, but can we also add a condition 8 to the site plan review that the applicant work with the neighborhood staff to address the concerns related to that rear sidewalk gate situation?
I'm fine with that. I'm wondering if we want to be a little more specific about what options we had, are you thinking a gate or just exploring?
Exploring other things along the lines of what we discussed here in the questioning. I think if they can come to a agreement on what a gate means and where it is and that kind of thing, it would be good.
If I could offer, work with staff to find a solution to prevent to discourage or prevent non-residents from entering that south pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
That is a friendly amendment and accepted item for an 8th stated condition. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Brown?
Aye.
Coleman?
Aye.
Colgill?
Aye.
Ellison?
Abstain.
You abstained from number 16? Okay. Kranzer?
Aye.
Lipke-Peer?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Schrader?
Aye.
Sweezy?
Aye.
8-0.
All right, and Commissioners, we have one more item on the agenda, a variance to reduce the minimum south interior side yard requirement. Staff recommendation to return that variance. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we return that variance.
We have a motion.
Move that we return the variance.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. With that, that concludes our agenda. Kimberly, are there any updates and communications?
I was just about to sneeze. No updates on communications. Thank you all for your time earlier today at the retreat, and we'll get another one set up.
Very good. Meeting is adjourned.